I have a gavel. It goes from room to room. Hi, everyone. This is the Metropolitan Council Committee of the Whole on November 1st. And I'm Charlie Zelli, Chair. Welcome, everyone. And this is our quarterly report to hear more about our safety and security. And I know we have Chief Morales and I believe General Manager Kandaras is here. But that is the agenda, and that'll take the whole time. And I have a dinner in Minneapolis, so hopefully we're not going to end late. But if we are, I know that, where's Rita? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Wow, we're just going to end on time. How about that? So that's the agenda. But first, the minutes that were sent out in advance from our meeting on October 18th. If there's any corrections or questions, and if not, a motion and a second for approval.
Move approval.
Second. Thank you. Thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Those minutes are approved. All right. Well, we'll just start with Chief. You're here, so I'm assuming that you're going to lead us off.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. There's a lot to be happy for, but before I begin, I just want to extend a great deal of gratitude to the men and women of the Metropolitan Transit Police Department because they have done a phenomenal job, and this wouldn't be possible without their efforts. And as I start with my presentation, I just, yes, the clicker. Thank you. When we talk about the updates, we talk about how we've been able to do this. And once again, I want to repeat that this has all been possible by the Metro Transit Police Department's proactive approach. And what does that mean? We've just changed the paradigm about how we do daily business, and it's more than utilizing our cars in our region. We have now asked the police officers to step out of their cars. When we speak specifically to the light rail, we get them out of the cars and we strategically have them ride 3 to 4 stops between their calls for service. But more importantly, between that, as they ride between the stops, they are to step off on the platform and make contact with the general public, our passengers. Just so there's a perception of safety, there's contact, you've seen a police officer. It's shown, we've had great improvement in ridership, and this is what we're promoting and this is what we expect to continue to go on as we move forward. How else have we been able to do this? We've been able to do this with joint beats and initiatives. What does that mean? We've strategically teamed up with our law enforcement partners. The Metro Transit Police Department still has workforce issues. We're currently down 38% in sworn officers. So what we've done is strategically partnered with departments such as the Airport Police, the Bloomington Police Department, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the U of M. We've signed joint powers agreements with them. We've went into memorandum of understandings. This next chart is our calls for service, and this is how police work is dictated. On the left-hand side is what's dispatched from 9/11, that's the lighter blue. And what you see is since January, it steadily went down. However, in the last month of September, we saw a slight uptick. If you look to the right, the blue officer initiated, proactive. That steadily went up. However, it went down in September. Now, the reason why that went down and the left went up is because as we are dispatched, we can't take a proactive position. We have to answer the calls that we are being dispatched and assigned to. Our next slide is an illustration in this graph that I just spoke about. The blue is officer initiated and the orange is dispatched by 9/11. And you can see the amount of calls. So when we look at the orange, which is actually dispatched from 9/11, it steadily has gone up. When we look at proactive position, in first quarter, second quarter, it went up, and then it went down in the third quarter, just because of how I described it. When you look at our locations of where we're being dispatched to. The top three are the first 3 quarters of the year, quarter 1, 2, and 3. That is a heat map of where our calls are coming in. When you look on the bottom, quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3, those are self-initiated jobs. You can overlap them and you can see that our self-initiated jobs are right where we're being dispatched. When we look at quarterly crime location and mapping, you see quarter 1, how it was all condensed into one area, especially in the downtown Minneapolis area. Quarter 2, it started to disperse, it started to go out. Quarter 3 was smaller and dispersed. And this is a result of the police doing proactive policing. They're being out there, they're being seen. So as a result of that, the crime is spreading out. 2023 reported crimes. So you see a steady decrease. What we can absolutely be proud of is the fact that we still continue to see steady crime reductions. Quarter 3 over quarter 2 is 22.3%. When you take quarter 3 over quarter 1, we go even further, 33.44%. So we have a 33% decrease in reported crimes from quarter 1 to quarter 3. Group A reported crimes have steadily gone down. You can see that in both maps, on the left-hand graph and the right side too. When we speak about the reported crimes, FBI top 7, we've seen a steady decline in those crimes reported as well. Blue on the left, light blue on the right. What does that mean? The light blue means the 17 crime categories most commonly dealt with in the Metro Transit Police Department. Those are trespass, drug equipment violations, and vandalism. The dark blue are the FBI's top 7 categories: homicide, sex offenses, robbery, assault, larceny theft, motor vehicle theft, and burglary, breaking and entry. Code of conduct violations. We have steadily seen a decline in this, a decrease. That's from sky blue, light blue, intimidation, loitering, disorderly conduct, nonviolent family offenses, interference with vehicles, operations, right? Consumption of food and beverages. Dark blue are alcohol, tobacco, and narcotics. We feel this is the key and this is the nexus to our success. By dealing with the code of conduct violations, we are avoiding the major violations. So as long as we continue to focus on the code of conduct violations, we feel it will impact our reduction in crime as we pursue this avenue of law enforcement work. Supplemental security. Supplemental security has absolutely been a key in this philosophy, because not only are we doing the hard work from the sworn position, but we rely on our supplemental security to then police those stations and to continue to move people throughout the system. Transit is meant to provide transportation throughout the system. It's for people to continuously move through them. So we utilize our supplemental security to do just that, keep people moving throughout our system. We began at Lake Street in Midtown. We followed on in Franklin. They currently supply security at those locations on a 24-hour basis. We then expanded to I-35W and Lake Street. We went from there to Brooklyn Center Transit Center. We're currently at Chicago Lake Transit Center, and we have roving transit on the Uptown Station. However, we will be, in the next coming weeks, supplying steady security at the Uptown Station, and then in the future, the Vertical Central Building in St. Paul. Vertical Central Building in St. Paul has a lot of moving pieces, so we want to make sure that we're working with our law enforcement partners in St. Paul. But more importantly, I've also spoken with the Ramsey County Sheriffs as well, so that we have different law enforcement agencies paying attention to that complex area there. What these graphs show are our supplemental security. So you can see Lake Street, Midtown Station, and Franklin in these two graphs. And what the lines indicate are the dates. The vertical line indicates the dates that we began with security. And you see a steady decline, not only in the officer-initiated responses, dispatched, and crimes being reported. In Franklin, the only difference there is that we took an initiative, police-initiated calls, the blue line, went steadily up, but crimes and dispatch calls kept coming down. The next three maps show I-35 and Lake, Brooklyn Transit Center, and Chicago Lake Transit Center. So we've had success in every one of these stations, with the exception of Brooklyn Center Transit Center. We're still trying to get grips on what's taking place there, and we have spoken with our security partners. We've expressed our concern. A conversation was had. We're still monitoring in hopes that this will improve, but there are a lot of complex pieces there. I want to remind people that transit is a window to the largest societal issues that are taking place. And when you talk about Brooklyn Center Transit Center, it's not only a transit issue, it's what's going on in Brooklyn Center itself that plagues this particular station. Cases assigned to investigators. When we look at 2023 over 2022, we see that we're slightly down, and that's as a result of less arrests. As I stated in the previous two quarters, we were never going to arrest our way out of the situation. We have to provide the services that are in need, that the communities is suffering. And that's our homeless population, that's our chemically dependent people, and those are people suffering from mental crisis. So naturally, we see that our caseload is going down, and this is great because we want to produce great investigations that lead to possibly arrest or a positive outcome, and prosecution. Staffing issues. Staffing issues continue to be a challenge for the Metropolitan Metro Transit Police Department. We're currently at 106 officers. We're down with part-time officers as well, support services, and our community service officers. So we're almost down 50% overall staffing. However, in working with our human resources, we've decided to focus on our community service officer program. We are teaming up with the Hennepin Tech College. And when we originally studied this, we saw that 181 applicants were redlined. We didn't realize why they were redlined. We didn't understand why they were redlined. We looked into this further. We did callbacks. We analyzed and came up with 81 candidates that were possibly qualified. We looked into this further. One of the requirements were that you had to be enrolled in a college to qualify as a community service officer. Since we're in between programs right now, in between semesters, we've met with the college yesterday. We've agreed that we have 24 applicants that are still interested, and what we're going to do is get them into college in the middle of the semester. We'll hire them and get them on board. It's our plan that for the next 3 to 5 years, we will start focusing on building our community service officer staffing so that we always have a resourceful pool to then convert over into police officers. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we have more individuals just waiting to become a Metro Transit police officer. I spoke about our efforts with the community officer program, continuous recruitment and hiring. We've also sped up our 4 and 1 day hiring workshops, so we do everything in 1 day just to be competitive in the market. We have new marketing plans introduced as well. As a matter of fact, next week we will start recording planned videos and sessions so we can start marketing out into the region and elsewhere to recruit potential candidates and let them know what the Metro Transit Police Department has to offer. And we have a current academy in there right now of 4 individuals. In the first quarter of the new year, 2024, we have another planned academy as well. Work culture. Work culture continues to be an important aspect. With the challenges that we faced in recent years, celebrating staff accomplishments is absolutely important. So we did this in the last quarter where we celebrated awards, the acknowledgement of their efforts in the field, but more importantly, we celebrated our history. 30-year anniversary. As I stated before, 30 years ago, we were considered a part-time security force. Today, we are a full-time police force, and we handle all major crimes and incidents. These are professional police officers that are licensed in the state of Minnesota. They should be respected and acknowledged as such. But career enrichment as well. We have laid out a plan with our Human Resources Department so they have a path forward and they know the opportunities that are presented in the Metro Transit Police Department, especially as we grow. And this is a retention tool. They see the path going forward. We've given them 2,312 hours of training in Q3 alone. We want a professional police force, individuals that are competent in their duties and responsibilities as they deal with the public, especially the public that are experiencing issues. And formal career development that I discussed with planning with our human resources. Great workplace project is absolutely important. This is employee engagement, so what you're seeing here, the illustration was the playing pool we had. We came in second place. We were 0.17 short of first. Airport won. You do the math. I'll say it was a...
Next time.
Yes, next time. We were close. Raise it then. And mental health support. I believe that the public and people tend to forget that there's a human being behind the uniform. And we have a young force of 3 to 5 years in average. And when they go out into the public and they deal with the issues that we are commonly seeing and challenges that people are suffering through, they carry that weight and they bring that home as well. And people say train, train, train. Well, they're highly trained and they're highly qualified. Unfortunately, they bring that home with them. And sometimes, behind the scenes, we cry when no one sees us crying because we're dealing with the traumas that we see on a daily basis. And creating a shared vision. Creating a shared vision is absolutely important. As a leader of the agency, it's incumbent upon me to share the future and the plan, not only for now, but the next 3 to 5 years, so they see the path moving forward and they understand there's growth and there's something to celebrate. And with that said, we celebrate our diversity. Equity and inclusion is absolutely important. As a matter of fact, we've entered the 30-30 initiative, and that's by the year 2030. We pledge that 30% of our force will be occupied by females. And we want that because we believe females belong in the profession of law enforcement, but they also bring a different tool to the table. And they handle things differently than men, so we absolutely enjoy and promote that partnership. And we're prioritizing recruitment, training, and mentorship. Collaborative policing is absolutely important. We realize that all of our law enforcement partners in the region are suffering workforce issues, so we have to work smarter, and we are working collaboratively together. But we deploy our homeless action team and our resources into the field. And most importantly, the Transit Service Intervention Project, which was mandated May 21 of 2023. We've worked with our community-based partners. We put out a request for proposal. We currently have 5 partners that we're teaming up with, and in the next coming weeks, they will be deployed out in the field. They offer social services. Now, they aren't social workers. We have social workers that we're teaming them up with. So social services partners will be out there throughout the system offering services that are needed as they experience them. However, I want to remind everyone that although we're deploying these community-based partners, if an individual does not want to seek help, we cannot force them. So we are going to offer these services and hope that we can encourage them for a better tomorrow. Garage liaisons. We have a sergeant assigned to each garage. And the reason why we do that is so that we keep our finger on the pulse of the problems that they're experiencing. They can report back to us so we can develop plans and deal with the issues as they're being seen. And our Joint Powers Agreement updates. As I stated earlier in the presentation, we have these agreements currently with Bloomington and Airport. We see a great improvement in these areas, and we want to continue to expound and expand upon that. And developing long-term approaches and problem-solving measures into practice. This is a department strategic plan. I constantly meet with my executives. We go over our CompStat numbers. We plan out what we want to do, especially as the winter months come into effect. We understand that we've been experiencing success in the last 3 quarters, This is going to be the challenging quarter as it gets cold and people start returning into the LRTs and the BRTs as shelter. So we will deal with this appropriately so that people feel safe as we provide the service that they come to rely on. With that said, I'll answer any questions before I turn it over.
Questions for the chief? Chai.
Thanks, Chief. My question is about the college enrollment aspect. Earlier this week, Governor Walz signed an executive order to make most state jobs not need a college degree, and so how could we be innovative to maybe comport with that? And would that be something we take up with the post or the legislature, or is that with our own rules?
Chair. Councilman Lee. So I believe that the governor has restricted, he's lowered from a bachelor's degree requirement down to an associate's degree. The post still requires an associate's degree to become a police officer. Until they change their rules, we'll have to comply with that. I will tell you from my personal experience, when I came on the job in October 15th, 1990, I did not have a college degree at the time, and if these were the requirements, I wouldn't be sitting with you today, in front of you today. So my personal opinion of that is I don't necessarily believe college is required at the beginning stage of your career. However, as you move up and become responsible, it may be required. But for a beginning police officer, I believe that mentorship and guidance is absolutely paramount, aside from education.
Thank you.
John.
Mr. Chair, members, this is great information, and I like where you've targeted certain areas and across the board coming down. Are we making similar presentations to the residents or the businesses that are within that radius there, that they can see the same thing we're seeing?
Chair. Councilman Pacheco, yes, absolutely. So not only do we have town hall meetings, I have been going out to Minneapolis, I have been going out to St. Paul, and I make the same presentations, and I make them aware of what we are doing, what are the proactive steps, just so that I can make them feel comfortable. And yes, they do express their concerns, and we exactly share our plan with them and let them know what's coming forward.
Councilmember Carter. Tony.
Thank you. Very, very encouraging information. Thank you for the update. I also wanted to just circle back around because at one point you mentioned the collaborative agreements that you have in place with a number of departments. And then you came back just a little bit ago and you said that you have those agreements in place with Bloomington and the Airport Police. I just wanted to be sure, are there others who are already working toward those collaborative agreements? And if you do not have them, what is the state of your plans?
Chair and Councilman Carter. So we currently have JPAs with the Airport Police, that's Joint Powers Agreement. We do have a contracted overtime with Bloomington. We have an agreement, we do joint beats with St. Paul, and I went down there personally, spoke with the chief and I, we spoke with roll call there. Also, we're using our transit service intervention project money with the U of M. So we have that currently going out to the end of the semester, which is December 22nd of 2023. At that point, we will reevaluate to extend.
Okay. Would you talk just a little bit about the concern that I've heard and that I know you're very, very aware of and working on with respect to the parameters around where we police and where our partner agencies police, and the extent to which your collaborative agreements are addressing that, whether joint powers or cooperative work?
Yes, Chair and Council. So we've been talking about a better collaborative effort, and that's that we are all licensed police officers in the state of Minnesota. So when we see something taking place, it's incumbent upon us to address it regardless of where that jurisdiction is. And to help that understanding with the young police officers, we have been teaming our police officers up together so that they're working, and that's what the joint beat is. So they understand. St. Paul Police, in particular, understands what transit police do, and transit police understand what St. Paul Police do, so that we can address those conditions simultaneously and together.
I thank you very much. I know that the concerns I've heard are when we call transit police and they can only go so far, and then we have to call St. Paul Police. And of course, none of us would call that cooperation. I know that's what you're working to address.
Absolutely, it's most definitely gotten better, and we've even extended it out when you talk about St. Paul and Union Depot, Mears Park. So when we realize that there's an issue there, we will help St. Paul address those issues, and they have been returning the favor as well.
Thank you.
Councilman Bento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, Chief Morales, this is a great presentation, but I'm curious as to how much you hear from the suburbs and the non-core cities and what special types of requests occur there.
Chair, Councilwoman Bento. So yes, we do hear from our partners from there as well. In particular, when you talk about the Green Line Extension and Eden Prairie. So we have been going out, I've gone out on one occasion, like I know I had a presentation around Brooklyn Park, and we speak about that cooperation that we're going to need as we expand. It's going to be a collaborative effort, and we need all of our resources working together to address any issues that may be coming up into the neighborhoods. So yes, we hear their concerns as well, we're addressing them, and I think that this is a partnership. We want to be great partners in the region. Go ahead.
Just one other question, and then from the non-core cities as it relates to existing bus and BRT routes.
Chair, Councilwoman, as it exists to existing BRT routes, we're still strategizing and we're coming up with plans. I haven't gotten out that far yet, but the same approach that I'm taking with the LRT, the light rails, I also want to employ and deploy into the BRT routes as well. So in the coming future, realizing that we have challenges with the winter months, we're going to start strategizing on a winter plan so that we can address those conditions.
Thank you. I would imagine the CSOs will be of great benefit
Yes.
to those plans. Thank you.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up a little bit more to Councilmember Carter's question, we have agreements with multiple jurisdictions. These are, the Chief mentions a couple of specific ones that are very key to what we're doing right now. But one of the efforts we heard about at Transportation Committee last time or a couple times ago was the process we're going through is reviewing all of those agreements because the nature of policing is changing and there's different things and we want to make sure that it reflects what we're doing now. So you'll start seeing those come through as the department works through updating all those different agreements. So it's just something to keep an eye out for as they start coming through council.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes, I have a question. This is a question actually that I asked before, but it was early in the tenure, and I had done I guess it's a riding tour, and I was talking to some of the security officers about, what were some of the major issues, and one of the issues was that arrests would be made, and they would be turned over to police department, and then the individual would be let go. And so I'm glad to hear about these agreements that we're gonna have, but how do you think that's gonna impact that, or is that impacting those situations where a person would be arrested and then they would just be let go, which is, if there are no consequences, then it happens again, so.
Chair, Councilman Carter, I want to be very clear on this. We at the Metropolitan Police Department arrest individuals, we've identified individuals, repeat offenders. We know who they are. However, we arrest them and they are prosecuted, they are released. Even persons who are suffering a crisis, a mental crisis, we grab them, we turn them over to the hospital evaluates them, stabilizes them, and then releases them back into the public. So we're dealing with the same people over and over again who continuously suffer through their issues. And there's only so far we can go. We arrest on probable cause, we detain to get you the medical attention that you need. After that, it's out of our hands. We need our prosecution partners to assist us, and we are talking. As a matter of fact, in the first quarter of the new year, I have meetings with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. They're going to come to our facilities, and we're going to ask their expectations and what they expect of us so that we can have effective prosecutions and hold people accountable for their behavior.
I think these are really the domain of county attorneys.
Yes.
Yeah, because that was my question, because there has to be an answer at some point, otherwise it just comes in circle, and so I'm glad to hear that.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on that, that's maybe something that we as a council need to bring some energy towards, is pressuring that we can't just keep the revolving door going. We need to actually have the mental health system and the correctional system deal with the actual behavior rather than just sending people back out on the street.
Fine. Councilmember Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a really great point, and I think when we look at the programs we're putting in place, with whether it's the transit service intervention project or the trip personnel, it's trying to get different people out there, and I think we'll get a better understanding of who are code of conduct violators, who may be people with recurrent or current mental health crises, who are having issues with substance abuse, who will follow the criminals. And I think that that's also going to help us almost break this out as to, to target that discussion to the right people, because they're not all the same. And I think that's going to help us just having more people out there and getting more information back in.
Exactly. Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Chief, and you have a very supportive and admiring board, and we hear from you more often than just quarterly, but as you are moving forward and expanding some of these partnerships and our own force, and we know this isn't something we can, this is not issues that we can necessarily arrest our way through. We're working deeply with social service partners as part of what TSIP is, and the rest. So thanks for your great work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And we're welcoming our general manager, Lesley Kandaras, and deputy general manager, Brian Funk. Well, I'll let you introduce your team.
Chair Zelli, council members, thank you. I will just kick off the second part of our presentation this afternoon, an update on our safety and security action plan implementation. And I am joined by Deputy General Manager and COO Brian Funk, Jim Harwood with our Engineering and Facilities Department, and Steffen will also be joining us as we do some deeper dives into some of the action items that we want to highlight this quarter. But just to get started, and you've seen this slide before, but as we do these quarterly updates, I'd like to just kind of step back and remind you why we're doing this and why you're hearing from us on a quarterly basis. The Safety and Security Action Plan was a culmination of a 2-year effort that started with a police review that was begun shortly after the murder of George Floyd. There was extensive community engagement led by the Citizens League. That then led to the council's police work group chaired by Councilmember Chambliss that set a recommended vision for public safety on transit. And then Metro Transit staff took that work and really worked to operationalize it and create the Safety and Security Action Plan, which is now comprised of 43 action items across 3 different areas of work: improving conditions on the system, training and supporting employees, and engaging customers and partners. And this work, wasn't brand new work. A lot of it is building on past investments, but as we shared with you back in June 2022, when the council endorsed those areas of work, we really see this as a living document. And so we continue to add to it, update it. We also continue to make it publicly available. One of the messages we heard throughout both the public engagement processes and the police work group's work is the importance of transparency to accountability. And so part of that is why we're here today. We also keep the reports on our website at metrotransit.org/public safety, and we're also providing some crime data on our webpage focused on performance. For this quarter, this is just a high-level look at where those action items stand in terms of status, and it's a good reminder that we do produce this much longer report. I think it's up to close to 40-some pages, over 40 pages now, where we have a brief description of where each of the 43 action items stand. So we've never tried to give you an update on all 43 items in one of these meetings. Tonight we're only going to focus on 2, but there are additional updates in the document itself. At a high level, we continue to have 21 items in implementation at this point. Either they're implemented in ongoing work or implementing completed projects. We have another 15 that are in some stage of implementation, and then 7 where we're more in the planning stages yet. So the overall news is, we don't have any work in here that isn't started, and we are really trying to monitor across the board how we're doing to advance these actions that we believe will help improve the public safety on transit. And as I mentioned, today we're going to really do a deeper dive into 2 action items. You heard many highlights from this quarter from the chief, the expansion of supplemental security, passing the contracts for the Transit Service Intervention Project. Both of those are helping create additional layers of presence and support on our system. The council also authorized the staff to set standards for cleaning and repair on vehicles and facilities. That was part of the legislature transportation bill this year. That again will help improve conditions on the system, make it clear that this is a well-regulated environment. We clean up graffiti, we fix broken glass as quickly as we're able. So there's a lot of work going on beyond what we'll focus on tonight. But the 2 action items that we are going to do a deeper dive into, it's actually 3, code of conduct spans a couple, is first Brian and Jim are going to talk about this light rail transit platform study. This is the new action item this quarter, 1.19. That's really looking at, are there additional investments we can make at our light rail platforms to improve the sense of security for our customers. And part of this, as you'll hear, includes looking specifically at the question of should we be adding fare gates or some sort of mechanism that would limit access to platforms to people who have paid their fare. So that's a question we get a lot. I imagine as council members, you get that question too. So we wanted to spend some time just talking about the work we're doing to explore that, learn more about that, how it fits into a broader look at other investments we might be able to make to improve that sense of security on our system. And so I don't want to get too far ahead of our presenters, but are looking forward to sharing that information with you this evening. And then code of conduct. Part of the Transportation Omnibus this year requires the council to adopt a code of conduct. Metro Transit has long had a code of conduct, but we've never brought it to this body for your approval. That was actually something we had identified in our safety and security action plan before the legislation, but now it is a requirement under law, so it was a good thing we had that well underway. And Pamela will provide an update on where that work stands in advance of a business item that we expect to bring to you yet this year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Cheers LA Council members. I'm Jim Harwood, Assistant Director of Engineering and Construction with Metro Transit. And as Lesley mentioned, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the newest action item related to our light rail platform study that we are currently embarking on. You can read our vision statement for the study here, but as was mentioned, we're looking at our existing light rail platforms and trying to determine are there renovations, retrofits, other infrastructure improvements that we could or should be making to improve that customer experience as it relates to safety and security. This isn't intended to come with recommendations from the study. What this is really doing is looking what's out there and trying to add more tools to our toolbox, right, that we can evaluate should we be implementing them at some or all of our stations. We're starting by looking at what we have in our system. We have Blue Line's 20 years old, give or take, Green Line for a decade, and determining what is our baseline. What do we have as it relates to our lighting levels, our camera coverage, our CCTV systems, things along those lines. We really want to learn as much as we can from other transit agencies as well. The challenges we're experiencing are in no way unique to our transit agency or our region, and we'd like to lean in on collaborating with other transit agencies around the country. As mentioned, some of the design on some of our existing Blue Line platforms and Green Line platforms happened some time ago. Taking a look at current SEPTED crime and prevention through environmental design, other design best practices, and see are there things out there that maybe weren't identified previously but really make sense now. And then we also want to make sure we're understanding are any of those potentially in conflict with our existing, or our ADA needs, our NFPA needs as it relates to life safety and egress, things like those lines that we cannot compromise in any way. So we are currently just getting started on this and hoping to have this kind of wrapped up here, as mentioned, in spring of 2024, so sometime probably mid to late second quarter. There's one element of that we have already got a start on here over the past month or two, and that is looking at the question Lesley mentioned related to fare gates and really evaluating what it would take, I guess, and what are the opportunities and challenges related to implementing and retrofitting our stations with fare gates. So we've identified 4 representative platforms that we're studying, those being Warehouse Avenue, or Warehouse District downtown, Franklin Avenue, 46th Street, and then Snelling and St. Paul. And these really represent our split platforms, side platforms, our center platforms, our embedded track, our ballasted track, and they are representative of the majority of our stations. This does not include grade separated stations. Those are a very different question as it relates to fare barriers. We do feel that this covers the wide majority of our system. And as mentioned, one of the things we're going to do, we have a built system. A lot of it is built in very tight corridors and very dense in urban areas, right? So what are the challenges that exist with that, with retrofitting, and what opportunities does that potentially provide? We are going to be leaning on and discussing with, similar as I mentioned before, with peer agencies. There are really only 2 in the United States, other agencies that operate at-grade rail systems with fare barriers. That's LA Metro's K-Line, it's a light rail system, and CTA's Pink and Brown Line is heavy rail. And I think Brian will mention in a future slide, but there's some significant differences as it relates to us in those systems. One being we have a 14-inch raised platform, and LA's platform is 39 inches above the rail right-of-way, and CTA's is 42 inches above the rail right-of-way. That creates a very different barrier than what we have with our 14-inch raised platform today. And then as part of this, we're also going to understand anything can be done with money to some extent, right? What was that cost? What is the order of magnitude cost for us to potentially do this? And then what are the trade-offs, and does that make sense? So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right, thank you, and good to be here again. Brian Funk, Chief Operating Officer, and Jim and the team in engineering and our facilities is really smart and does a really great job of being able to organize this. But another, of course, key consideration of my team within operations is how we can also navigate the system and deliver the service that we're aiming to provide. Anything can be engineered out, but it might not be accessible for people who want to use the system, and so those are all key considerations. And so, as Jim and the general manager mentioned, this is largely a built or at least designed environment. The Blue Line, of course, will be celebrating 20 years next summer. When we built the Blue Line, in fact, some might remember that we had platforms designed mostly for 2 cars, and we ended up expanding those with that project being wrapped up in 2009 and 2010. And so that Green Line opened in 2014, as we well know, between downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul, and the Green Line extension. Platforms have been constructed, and we're aiming for that opening in 27. Jim also mentioned that we're largely in an at-grade environment, so we're operating above ground, within or next to existing roadways, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and those elements. We have a couple of exceptions, but that was certainly intentional. It provides ease of access, good accessibility, easy on, easy off. It's a safer environment too for anybody who does not or finds themselves in the right of way to be able to recover from being in the wrong place. And so 2 noteworthy examples would be the terminal station at Terminal 1, which of course is below grade. But one of the things with that station is that's part of our fare-free zone between the airports. And so testing or evaluating fare gates in a fare-free zone probably isn't going to be our highest priority, even though it may be something that lends itself to that model. The Lake Street Midtown is another one above grade. That entire station is part of our proposed capital improvement project for a wholesale review, and so that design and evaluation we'll be considering, but I'll get to that in just a second. And of course, one of the key features, as Jim mentioned, with both our system and many at-grade and many modern light rail systems is that proof of payment fare validation. rather than having those physical obstacles and barriers requires the fair inspection model to be able to validate that people are complying with our requirements. And so the station design also lends itself to that. This here is a picture from Fort Snelling Station on opening day in June 2004. And one of the things that's sort of behind the group there is that our validators are as you are walking onto the platform. We don't have a completely separated system. The ticket vending machines at many of our stations are inside the platform, some of which were by design, some of which are by constraint to be able to fit those into that built environment that Jim described. So there's a lot of things to evaluate when we're looking at a potential retrofit option. And the other thing that I'm saying what many people in the room know, but just to sort of reiterate that not all rail transit is the same. And so there's heavy rail transit, which many people are familiar with and associate with that fare gate model. The picture here is from Jamaica Station and New York City Transit. It's a major connection for the air train and New York City subway and Long Island Railroad. And they're moving 250,000 people a day through this one station. This is a heavily used environment. But those closed systems are more likely to have the high platforms that Jim described. Most are in the 40-inch to as much as 60-inch above the top of rail. And so, as I'll show in a future picture, that's one of the considerations we have for a distinction. There's often no direct track access except at the platform, and so once you're inside, there's an ability to gain track access, but aside from that, you envision the L system in Chicago. It's up above your head, and much of New York City is the same. WMATA is subterranean or at an above grade setup, and so that plays into part of that evaluation. And in all cases, or at least in the vast majority, the goal is still requiring staff presence at those stations, and I'll illustrate that here momentarily. And then you have light rail transit, which of course we fit into that category along with our peer agencies like Sound Transit in Seattle and Valley Metro in Phoenix, Calgary, and so on. That's more likely to be the proof of payment system, often featuring a lower platform, easier boarding, low floor vehicles, and it's primarily at grade. Some of that, of course, is due to design and construction costs on the front end, and that's where we fit in. And so one of the things that we always want to evaluate is when we add elements to our system, what are some of the other potential challenges that need to be considered? And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the things that we certainly have thought about over time and will be part of what gets evaluated over the coming months and into next year. Is that there's an element, and I'm going sort of in order from left to right across the picture. And this was the chief and I standing and observing for a couple of minutes, had this all play out right before us. And so the turnstiles being challenging to navigate. And so the width can be a barrier for some. Here we have a pilot on their way to JFK whose bag got stuck. And I didn't show his face because he didn't consent to showing that, but he wasn't very happy. And then the two sort of arrows and stars on the far side of the fare gates are MTA police. And so that level of enforcement still needs to be present in most cases to monitor for people who are still jumping the fare, sliding under the gates, using the emergency egress as an access, all of those elements that still need to be considered. Next is the access for people who have mobility impairments, and in this case they were testing and still are testing a gate that is more of a flip open style. And so on this one, the previous slide on the far right, you can see what it looks like when it's closed, but even in that case it solves one issue for people who have a wider device or maybe a personal care attendant, but in our case we saw an unattended child who got away from the parent, and boom, they were gone under the fare gate, and the parents left on the other side scrambling for their card, trying to get through the gate. And so those are all things to really evaluate. And you still need emergency egress. If there is an event where there's an evacuation, you have a mass number of people. Over on the far right side behind the customer relations rep that's there, they still have a gate, and folks who have been to New York City and are familiar with that occasionally you'll see and hear that open and the alarm is blaring and people are coming and going, and it again requires that omnipresence. And the station agents, when we were here, we saw 4 different station agents all helping people navigate the turnstile system. And so they have a blend of systems. They are introducing a new tap fare payment system, which is super handy but not familiar for people who are used to using Metro cards. And so that it may have been a little bit unique, but I think it just continues to illustrate that having staff at locations is really one of the keys that we continue to aim towards, and as the chief described, is making a difference in our deployments. A couple other considerations that need to be evaluated. This is a picture of the central station a couple of blocks away with the vertical circulation building on the left side of the photo. The arrows are denoting that we have an at-grade access with required pedestrian crossing, and that's something that in a built urban environment we need to maintain the ability for cars and pedestrians and bicyclists to be able to cross the tracks and continue on their journey. And but what it does lead to is something I'll show in just a minute. We also have, of course, an outdoor northern climate. We just had some snow and a little bit of ice at the end of October. We love it, we embrace it, but it's not always friendly to mechanical equipment exposed outdoors 24/7 all year round. So evaluating that and seeing what's possible, it's just very different than in an enclosed setting. We also need to remove platform snow from our operation for our customers and for safety while you're on that. And how does that more inability or barrier there impact their ability to clear those platforms in an effective manner and be able to do it quickly. And finally, where I'll spend just another minute on the next slide, is talking about the risk of trespassing onto the guideway. We have these 14-inch platforms, and that's something that we really want to learn more about and not introduce a new hazard while we're trying to solve one issue. And so this is a picture, kind of a close-up of my tape measure, but you can see that this is the Bloomington Central Station on the Metro Blue Line down near the Mall of America, and it shows that we're about 14 inches from the track bed. It'll measure 14 inches from the top of rail. That's the environment for 28 of our 37 stations. And so we have that concrete guideway right there, which unfortunately for this use case does not provide much of a barrier for people who decide to walk around the platform-based gates. That's equivalent to about 2 standard staircase steps. The standard for a staircase is just over 7 inches, and so it's not going to be possible for everybody, but for many able-bodied people, that's not a giant feat. It does have its benefits if somebody finds themselves on the track bed or on the guideway. Unlike a system like New York, you're able to quickly be able to recover from that. So if there's a train approaching, you or others are able to render aid quickly, and that's a really good thing. But again, in summary, evaluating, we don't really want to introduce a new hazard, or we at least want to be able to fully consider what the implications of that are, given we're always going to be operating trains. That's our primary objective, is to be able to move through those stations safely and be able to do so reliably, and of course have 0 pedestrian strikes. And so Jim also mentioned, there's a couple variations. This is a picture at the Fort Snelling station on Blue Line. This is what we call a ballasted track with the rock that's in the track bed. Those are slightly higher. You add roughly 6 inches, because that's just over 6 inches is how tall the actual rail is that's embedded in the concrete track. And so that's a bit larger of a step, but that's just 9 of our stations, primarily on Blue Line. And so it's, again, not easy to reach, but is certainly achievable. And so also wanted to sort of illustrate, and so as people leave today's meeting and we continue the discussion and the evaluation, on the left side is an illustration, that same Bloomington Central station. And I measured this at a number of stations, and so this will get you close without having to step anywhere you shouldn't be. But that 40 inches is about the height of the first bar on the railing on the blue lines. And so For anyone who finds themselves or wants to visit Bloomington Central Station, that might be a good place to do this measure where you can mentally draw that line to show where that lines up with your waist or your hip. That's how much higher a platform is in an area like St. Louis on the right side with that 40-inch platform as compared to 14 inches. And so with that, I think we're gonna pass it to Pam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Zally, council members. My name is Pam Steffen. I manage the customer relations and experience for Metro Transit. And I am here today to talk to you about the fun part of my job, code of conduct. Everything is fun, actually. Like Lesley had said, about a year ago, staff within Metro Transit had started working on refreshing our code of conduct. It's been almost a year, and it's really taken that long to get us to where we are today. We really did some deep internal inreach, which I'll talk about on the next page. But if you're not familiar with the code of conduct, the pictures here on the right, they're showing you what we call interior cards that are on board our buses and trains. That really outlines what we expect from our riders, whether they are illegal things or just kind of our code of conduct, non-illegal things. So some of those examples are fare payment. You should pay your fare. So that's kind of that's an illegal item. Don't distract our operator. No smoking. Use headphones. Littering and watching your language are a few examples. So I talked a little bit about why it's taken really almost a year to really do a refresh of our code of conduct, because it's been a while and a lot has changed. And so last November, we started out with engaging our bus operator mentors at a couple workshops. And what we did is we listed all of our existing code of conduct challenges, whether they were illegal or not, and we had them rate those from high, medium, and low. Like what really means the most to them, to really understand that. So it was really great to do that with them, and we got some really good feedback. We also did facility visits, worked with transit police, worked with our Transit Safety and Security Committee. We developed a survey kind of based upon the bus operator mentor workshops that we then launched to the rest of Metro Transit. So we saw 432 responses from that survey. And this kind of outlines, it's like a pie chart of those 432 responses, who responded internally to that. So large, you can see here in this pie chart, a large portion of the survey respondents were our bus operators. And then office employees who ride the train and really wanted to provide their feedback responded to this. Transit police, management. So you can kind of just look at this pie chart here and see who was able to provide their feedback. Rail operators as well, maintenance staff. So we went a step farther. So not only did we inreach to our own employees and staff, this past June, July, and August, we did some outreach and engagement with our customers themselves, where we, once a month, we're out and about on the system, what we call internally our Great Day in Transit, and we're riding and engaging with our customers. So we had a survey for them. It was very similar to the survey that we did for our staff, where we had a list of all of the code of conduct violations, and we wanted people to rate them high, medium, and low. What bothers them the most, seeing, and what doesn't really matter the most. So it was pretty darn interesting. So out of all those surveys that we did externally, we received over 2,000 surveys, results from that. And so we used social media, we tapped into our Metro Mobility folks, staff responded, just all different customers through newsletters and whatnot. So I think I forgot to remind folks that, so our code of conduct isn't just for Metro Transit, it actually extends out into Metro Mobility, Microtransit, Transit Link. So it's really a code of conduct for anybody riding whatever mode of transit in our system. All right, tiny words here, but sorry about that. So this is a graph of the combined feedback responses. So both from our employees and then from our customers. So it's the top 10. What matters to our riders the most as far as what do they want to see on our code of conduct? And I'll just kind of read them off here. So interfering with an operator, sexual harassment, threats of violence, urinating and defecation, spitting on an operator, discrimination, harassment, smoking, vaping, holding the doors, which happens a lot on our trains, disorderly conduct, and alcohol drinking. We really made it to the top 10 of our code of conduct. So this information here really drove our decisions on what the refresh code of conduct should be. Lots of words on this graph, or on this slide. So really what we have come up with as a draft, and we want to hear your feedback on how you feel about this, but again, it was driven by what our employees wanted, what our customers wanted. So the refresh version will most likely have all of what you see here on this slide. So threatening others, spitting, smoking, vaping, alcohol, sexual harassment, as well as discriminatory harassment, defecation, vandalism, littering, holding doors, walking on tracks, non-fair payment. So that majority of that list is the legal items. The second list, which is non-bold, is the things that are not illegal. However, we still don't want them to happen on our system. So one fare, one seat, loud music without having your earphones in. We're talking on a cell phone, on speakerphone. Service animals must be in a carrier. Vulgar language, profanity, eating, drinking, soliciting, gambling, dangerous chemicals, and large items. So what that really means is like bringing a lawnmower on board with gas, or a snowblower. It does happen. I have pictures. It does happen. Amazingly, it does happen, mostly from our rail line, of course.
We can't put them to work.
Yeah. Some work, some don't. So yeah, we could spend hours talking about the fun stuff that we get in Lost and Found. And then large items. We've had wingback chairs, mattresses, you name it. I mean, people use transit for many things, not just to get to work, but perhaps moving or going to their job with their snowblower. So that's kind of what that bullet point covers. Riding bikes on the platforms, skating, skateboarding, and so on. So this is really a list that we're going to fine tune more. So we are going to be going to the Transportation Committee at the end of November, and then the full council in December. And as Lesley had mentioned, our refresh code of conduct needs to be adopted per legislative mandate. All of these acts, we really want our riders to know that when we see these types of things happening, we are most likely gonna be removing you from either our facility or the rail vehicle or whatever it is that these acts are being performed on, will most likely be removed from our system. All right, enforcement. Well, this is a fun one. So the words kind of in the square box is one of the newer state statutes that came out of the legislature. And we're still actually working to really understand the meaning of this and how we can provide enforcement and who can provide enforcement. So again, we're still working internally on this and obviously need to have this wrapped up before we go to the Transportation Committee. But ultimately, transit police, they can remove folks from our system. Our CSOs, trip agents, other authorized folks really need to provide a warning first, and then we'll be calling our Transit Control Center for police backup. But more to come on this. This is very preliminary at this point, but you'll hear more in November. I talked about Transportation Committee, November 27th, the full council, December 13th, and then public communication. We've heard from some of you. Lesley and I went to the Equity Advisory Committee back in July, where we heard that we need to have positive messaging about our code of conduct. So once we have these items adopted by the council, we'll be working hard on the messaging and how we're gonna roll that out. So more to come on that. We'll be looking at, public communication Q1 to our customers with lots of new signage, information on our website, digital, audio, files, announcements, partnerships and outreach. And then for our employees, we'll use newsletters, town halls, site-specific inReach to update them as well on the code of conduct.
Here we are, great presentation. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. And thank you very, very much, Pam. This is a really great presentation, and the work that's gone on here I know has been long-standing, and you've received a lot of feedback and will get more, I'm sure, before we roll out. I just wanted to comment that I did notice my version, your version were slightly different. The amplified phone or music had moved over to the light side, meaning not illegal, but definitely not desired or allowed. And I appreciate that. I wanted to comment, probably being an English major or something like that leads me to do this, but I also think it may make a difference. And that is that the few things at the top of the light colored list are not allowed. They are desired.
Yeah.
So we just have to really watch how that is worded. The wear shirt, shoes, or one fare, one seat, and service animals being in a carrier are things that we want. So you might want to reverse that wording to make it things that we don't want.
Yeah.
Although I do prefer saying what we want. Let me just say that, okay? Thank you for all of this work, and take those comments. I'm sure you'll use them as needed to make sure there's clarity.
Absolutely, and thanks for calling out those differences. This is a work in process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, so thank you.
Great comment.
And I do appreciate that code of conduct starting out, excuse me, Mr. Chair, with respect to each other by a code of conduct. We always want to say what we want, even if the context has to be about things we don't. So thank you.
All right, we're going to go on this side of the room and start with Gail Cedar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question on the code of conduct, and I do have something on gates, but we'll get to that. Well, let's focus on this. Is there a reason that eating and drinking are not totally banned? There are several communities in the United States, in Europe. It costs a lot of money. You don't want people to litter, but you've got all this food and trash and handling and cost. at least eating. I mean, drinking from covered containers is what you want. But the seats, there's lots of places. Chicago, I think, has no eating and drinking, and Sweden has no eating and drinking, and you go on and it makes you feel safe, it makes you feel clean, it makes you feel like it enhances the customer experience. I'm sure there was a discussion about that, but I would push to do that.
Thank you for that comment, council member. Long ago, when I first started working here, which is forever ago, you couldn't do anything. No eating, no drinking.
That's what I thought.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, that's the way it used to be. And then now you can see that we don't want people eating, but as far as drinking, the containers need to be covered. So that's kind of where we're ending up now. Most of the people have their water bottles with them in their Caribou and their, Starbucks. So it's tough, for sure.
Maybe we put eating on the not allowed.
Yeah, I think that,
I mean,
I think that the not allowed, I should have changed that, wordsmithed it better. I actually had these separated on 2 separate slides. So some of the wording that I had on the second slide didn't make it to this slide. So it's a little confusing for you, and I apologize for that, absolutely.
So eating is prohibited,
Yes,
but we should drink from contained.
covered containers, yes.
Okay, you're
Yeah.
right, so we're working on the presentation.
no,
Yeah.
I just.
Yeah, no, I
It gets so
totally
messy
agree.
with the
It
litter
does.
and everything.
Work in process, but that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Someone get Cameron, sorry, Angela.
Hi, so I do have a fair gate question, so I can pause, I can hold off.
No,
If there's more.
I have a question on that,
Okay.
but you go ahead.
So you had a lot of different examples of fair gates, the types that are used around the country and different systems. I think one thing that is always a concern for me is the effectiveness of each of these tools. Because the last thing we want to do is, install turnstiles that are just going to be jumped over anyways. So, looking at not only the context that we're working within, but which of those tools have been deemed more effective in implementing fair laws.
And I'll say thank you, Mr. Chair, Council Member. I do think that that is one of the kind of principles of and why the reasons why we're kind of undertaking that wholesale evaluation, and we'll definitely hit on that as we continue to move forward. Is that effectiveness and what is the return on investment, and are we making progress in the way that we think it would be, and all of those. So. And as folks may know, other systems are evaluating that same thing, and they're making retrofits to existing systems. And WMATA in Washington, D.C. is one example that, for folks who've been there, it's sort of a triangle-shaped flipper system that you go through to tag in and tag out. They're experimenting with things that are much higher because people could slip through or slide through when somebody taps their card and those things. So it's a great point.
Yeah, my sense is there's fare barriers and then there's closed systems, which are 2 different things. And I've talked to some general managers who say they can't do a closed system because of the ADA requirements. So that really is like floor to ceiling barrier, which is really different than a turnstile. Yeah, so it's interesting, the range of all 3. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All that's old is new again. When I first came to the council, we had the same discussion when we were going from 1 line to 2 on, if we were gonna make a change, we needed to do it before everything was built, and came to the conclusion that as Peter Bell used to put it, the juice was not worth the squeeze. I anticipate we'll probably come to the same decision again, because of the ADA barriers and all of the staff that you would need to man that, since we are struggling to staff what we already have. But it keeps coming up, so having a more recent study that we can say, look, we looked at it again, and it still doesn't make sense is a worthwhile thing to do. So I appreciate the clarity that you brought to it with your little rulers and pictures and everything, because I found that helpful to visualize.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember, thank you for that feedback, and as somebody who's been here not quite forever like Pam, but for a while. I also recall, and is the juice worth the squeeze is something that still is echoed through the halls of the Met Council. But to that end, those field visits and the observations and how a concept relates to our system is something that we find very valuable. And looking at Charles Carlson, MTS Executive Director, when he was on the Metro Transit team and we were evaluating platform height for one of the BRT projects, it was a similar exercise to get out in the field and then sort of construct a mock-up, and all of those things do a lot to inform the process.
Charles, you've left a legacy. Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, thanks. This was not covered, but it's related. I remember we had an RFP for wraparound services, and I was wondering about the status of that, if that's been executed.
Chair, Councilmember Lee, would you say a little bit more? I can think of a couple potential things that might be related to, I'm sorry.
It was related to the security, and I think it's more like social services.
Okay, thank you.
Mental health.
So Chair Zelli, Councilmember Lee, I think the most recent effort on that is the Transit Service Intervention Project, which we kicked off back on June 1st per the legislation. Started out with our homeless action team, bringing in many of the partners they work with on a regular basis, both county representatives, nonprofits, to really do an outreach surge this summer. And then kind of behind that, we've been working to get these contracts in place. Part of the legislation came with $2 million that we could use to reimburse organizations that could provide social services and outreach, and that was defined to some extent in the legislation. And so the first batch of those was approved by the council back in September, I believe it was, and the contracts have been signed, they've gone through orientation, they're in the process of being set up to be on the system. And then there's a second round of another 5 contracts that have gone to Transportation Committee. I don't believe they've come to the full council yet, that's probably at the next meeting. That will also do that. So it's a mix of outreach, social service connection work, and so that's ongoing. I'll also mention that through the ongoing partnership between the Homeless Action Team and the Metro HRA, there's been some attempts to make sure to support people in housing search and so forth too. So there may be additional resources beyond the Transit Service Intervention Project that we could bring an update on.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of quick things. So first of all, I think Pam adequately highlighted very well why the last employee recognition we did was for the person who runs our lost and found system.
Yes.
So we know that is very, very important. So I have one question on the platforms and one question on the code of conduct. So on the platforms, so we're getting a lot of questions about what they're doing in St. Louis, where they're making an effort to start closing off parts of their system. They're doing it in chunks. This year is supposed to be 4 platforms, which I don't think will open until next year. But one question I have, is this their existing heights of their platforms? So then we would actually have to reconfigure really not just access, but our platforms, because it goes to that cost, that is the juice worth the squeeze, question of if we have to do more significant construction to be able to do something like this.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Barber, this picture is from an opening of a new station that they had a couple of years ago. In my correspondence and outreach to officials at the Metro Transit St. Louis bi-state, they indicated that their system is a 39.8-inch platform height. And so that's compatible with a different style of rail vehicle as well. One of the things that we look at is we have the height for those door clearances from where it's sitting on the motor trucks and above the rail is configured for our 14-inch platform to provide that even level boarding. Theirs does the same, but at a much higher height. And so if we were to change the platform height by, for example, submerging the tracks or adding to the platform, we would have incompatible vehicles at that point.
Mr. Chair, follow-up. I really appreciate that because I think that is the most current news right now of comparisons that we're seeing. And I think it's really important to understand, it's not apples to apples. That it would take a lot to do this. This just isn't putting up the entrance and exit barriers, which bring their own concerns. There's a lot more to it. I am glad we're digging into it with this level of detail. This makes me happy because we can actually talk about it and consider it and understand. But I think when we look at cost and timing, it's a lot more than just, gate off these spaces.
What I really appreciate about your presentation, Brian, is that it's not just each system is different, but each platform and each station is different. So
And
you've got
vehicles.
And
Yeah,
vehicles. So
Right.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One final one. So I have a question, or I guess it's probably more of a request when it comes to Transportation Committee for the Code of Conduct. Some of the things that land in the illegal bold side are somewhat subjective. The loud phone calls or music, which still shows up online, threatening others, things like that. What I'd like to know is how, and it might not be a perfectly clear answer, but maybe open to have a discussion at Transportation Committee of what's gonna be the threshold that somebody gets cited for or something for that? Because when we're talking about something that makes us uncomfortable versus something that's illegal, we wanna make sure we have it well defined.
Chair, Counselor, I might start if you're okay with that. So this is an example. We started this process back a year ago, and the transportation omnibus actually changed what was illegal on transit and wasn't to some extent. So there's, and I'm not a lawyer, but there's a chapter in Minnesota statutes 609-855, that's crimes on transit. And so part of what switched on us is some of the things that were in there as illegal were taken out as part of this year's omnibus. So some of what so our side, we need to update this anyway to reflect that, including fare evasion. And so I think by the time we come to Transportation Committee, we'll make sure that we have that full handle along with our Office of General Counsel, and we'll probably ask them to attend with us to talk about this since it's really new, to make sure we're fully setting our code of conduct based on where the law is now and what it was when we started this project back in November last year. So that's not exactly a question, but just letting you know that's an area that's a work in progress. We're working very closely with the Office of General Counsel to make sure we fully understand what changed.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I had a similar question. My question is, if we look at other major metro areas throughout the country, Chicago, New York, LA, if we look at their code of conduct, which things, how do they stack up? And I'm sure that was considered, but I want to see that so we could have a feel for where we are. Are we in the middle? Are we on the extreme?
You follow up on that?
Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah. Chair, Councilmember Carter. Great question, and we actually have that. We had somebody in our transit control center. He actually did peer agency reviews of multiple different agencies. So we 100% have that, and we can definitely include that in our when we go to the Transportation Committee. What we found there. Most of the things were very similar to what we have. Not much of a difference, honestly. But we did do that. Great question.
Because I know the marijuana law is changing, and that could have a slight impact on it also.
Yeah, that will be a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
But we currently have no smoking, so,
Yeah.
for that particular delivery
Yeah.
system.
Doesn't say no chocolate.
No, it doesn't say no eating, you can't eat your chocolate chip.
No eating your brownies.
Councilmember Lidstrom.
Actually, I did see someone rolling a joint on the train just about like a week ago. And like, that's not illegal to roll a joint. Had the marijuana out, put in the little.
Oh my gosh.
Getting ready.
Light bulb.
Getting ready.
Brave new
Yeah, I
world.
guess.
Did you have a question?
I did, yeah, I do.
I thought you just went.
That was good to know.
The question is the contracts that we recently signed, which is great, with the mental health professionals. How will folks know that they are mental health professionals? Are they in a uniform? Are they have identification of some kind? And will they, I know we have agreements with several of them, so will they all be similarly identified? I imagine yes.
Chair Lesley, Councilmember Lindstrom. I want to follow up with you with the details on that, but in general, the way it's been described to me, so since they're from different organizations, in part we're working to coordinate schedules to make sure we know who is where. My understanding is we're working to get them some sort of identifiable vest or something, so you know that they're with the Transit Service Intervention Project. In addition to that, what the protocols will be for them introducing themselves or what, what type of uniform they may be working through part of their usual, from the organization they're from. We can get more details on that as it gets set up. But the idea on our part is to make sure they are identifiable as part of this effort. And so we can follow up with more detail as it gets rolled out.
Follow up on a separate item. I use the text for safety probably about 4 times a year, I would guess. I used it last week, maybe just a couple days ago, for a maintenance issue on a sign on the A line that was wonky, and I wasn't quite sure. Like, how do I notify people? I guess you probably already knew, but I didn't. Like, if something is wrong with the equipment, how do I let you know? How does a rider let you know that this button isn't alerting, or the sign at Snelling and Larpenteur is really out of whack? So I texted the photograph using the text for safety, and I just said, this is not a safety issue, and like 2 seconds later, they got back to me saying, we'll let them know. And I'm sure they did.
They said thank you.
And they did say like I'm sure the red lights, get right on this.
Chair, Councilmember, I'll just mention that one of the elements in the transportation omnibus required us to set cleaning and repair standards, and one of the pieces of that is, I believe it's by February 1st, we need to have on our facilities a way to contact us with problems. And it's really, I think, been something we've been talking about a lot. You might have seen us about, because we were literally just talking about this before we came in, about how necessary it is to make it really clear that here's how you report an issue. And so we'll have more to report on that as we get closer to implementing it by the deadline. But thank you for raising that. And in the meantime, report it any way you can and we'll get it to the right place, but we know we need to make it easier and clearer.
Super, great question. Councilmember Tony.
Thank you. Again, briefly on the code of conduct, I don't see any language pertaining to the operator, and I'm wondering what that discussion was. There is the one about interfering with or delaying vehicles. Was it felt that that was enough? I know that there have been concerns about operators being interfered with, disrespected. How did that get fleshed out? I know you had input from the driver.
Yeah. Chair, Councilmember Carter, great question. The list that you're seeing before you is really a super rough draft of what you might see on a sign. As Lesley mentioned, by February 1st, we have to post, how to report issues. But in addition to that, providing that our code of conduct is adopted, we're also going to include, the list of all of our code of conduct things along with how to report an issue. So the wordsmithing, as if you will, still needs to kind of take place and will play out here in what you see. But we don't want people threatening our operators or our other customers or anything. So I appreciate your feedback and we'll take that
And
back.
threatening others then.
Yeah, threatening others.
That would be.
Don't threaten anyone,
Yeah.
no matter who they are,
That's-
when you're riding
thank you.
transit. Yeah, so we'll make that clear.
Any other questions for the team? All right, well, Lesley, Pam, Jim, Brian, thank you, Jim, sorry. Thank you so much. I know this is a work in progress. We want you to think of us as your partners. And as we hear things, you've given us good information, but also as we see things, we'll bring them back to you. And, did you have, go ahead.
No, just that,
Councilmember Pacheco.
Mr. Chair, first, and thank you, because just a little quick story here was that I take the number 6 bus downtown, my daughter takes the number 6 bus, I give her a call, and she left her wallet on the bus. There's $100 in it, and my ID. So I get a call, talk to Pam.
Using your ID.
And so I said, I was just over at the meeting, over at the transit office. So I went over there, and she delivered it, and $100 was in the wallet, still there. I've got her wallet, got it back to her, and so it's those big scary stories about what goes on in the buses and downtown. But my daughter's 16, she knows how to behave on the bus, she knows what to do, and it worked out well.
Well, again, thanks for your progress, and we look forward to, as these code of conduct and these other elements, the trip officers are crystallized. We're ready to hear those and give approval. So with that, have a good weekend and week, and we'll see you soon. This meeting adjourned.